I have been plagued my entire life with an identity crisis. Am I Israeli? My parents are Israeli. I speak Hebrew. Am I an American? I was born here. I speak English. Am I Sephardic? I was born in a Sephardic home, but the parents who went to pretty much an Ashkenazi educational system. I myself studied in most of my years in an Ashkenazi educational system, so I'm very familiar with both. Actually, I'm not embarrassed to tell you. Yeah, I'm embarrassed to tell you. But I'm perhaps more familiar with my Ashkenazi side than with my Sephardic side. My Sephardic side is a recent discovery. Am I recent? 6 years, 7 years. But recent compared to my many, many years on this earth. What kind of Sephardic am I? Am I Yemenite from my father's side, Moroccan from my mother's side? Am I all kinds of things? Am I Haredi? I kind of dress that way. I went to Haredi institutions, but I don't feel at home in that world, and I felt much more at home in perhaps a more religious Zionist climate, which is where I taught when I lived in Israel, even though it's not where I studied, where I lived in Israel, and so on and so forth. And I decided that the answer to this question was not to choose. It was to be indecisive. So many people have to choose. It's like, what are you? What am I? I am... And they put a label on themselves. They say the labels are for clothes, not for human beings. Suddenly I'm defined with, are you an Orthodox rabbi? I don't know if I'm an Orthodox rabbi. I'm a rabbi. What is a rabbi? You go figure out what a rabbi is. We'll figure out what Orthodox means. Are you... I don't know what I am. And I'm happy to not know what I am. Because not having to fit in a box means that I have the freedom that most people don't have. Most people don't have the freedom to venture out of their box. Most people crave from it. It's a very nice, comfortable place that you live in. I live in this box. Let's say I belong to a certain Hasidic group. Let's say I was Breslov. There was a time that I thought it would be Breslov. And at that point in time, you're like imagining it, right? Dancing on top of a truck somewhere. Yeah?
It's never too late.
It's never too late.
I recreate myself every 5 years.
It's pretty consistent. Every 5 years.
Yeah, every 5 years.
And the truth is that when you become Breslov, so you have to stop learning everything else. You just study Rabbi Nachman's writings and Rabbi Natan's writings, and you talk about meditating in forests, and then you get stuck in that box.
But isn't that being very...
I think he's okay, not bothering me, thank you.
Seeing the world for what it is.
No, I think that there's a certain comfort. It's a certain comfort that people have to fit in a box. It's very... Even Elchanan has this thing where he likes to climb into these plastic bins that we have at home and stay there, because what it does for a person is there's this huge big world that's very scary. It's called the living room, right? There are couches and tables and chairs. There's my little box. This is mine. I fit here. I can sleep here. And the dishwasher. But he's not doing something because he's crazy. It's a normal thing that people do to try to find which corner of the earth do I feel most at home. It's something that most people do. What it does create, though, are then divisions. Because if I feel comfortable in this box, then along comes someone else with a different box, and their box doesn't exactly fit in my box. Or my box is too big for their box, or too small for their box, or it's not the right shape, or it doesn't exactly stack on top of each other. And you have a very divided world. On a Jewish level, I can't fix the whole world. On a Jewish level, these divisions have been getting more boxy as time goes on. It used to be that certain denominations in Judaism were much closer to each other than they are today. It used to be that certain things in Judaism were much more understood. There were status quos that didn't get blurred. We understand who you are. I know who I am. But boxes are becoming a thing. People are liking to box themselves even more. I find in the world of Jewish study that there are even more boxes. Now you might... I was listening last night to that class for Mordechai Eliyahu, the former Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel. An hour-and-a-half class on Jewish law. As I asked my wife, out of curiosity, when rabbis came to speak in Brooklyn, did anyone ever speak for an hour and a half in Jewish law, in halakha? She thought, nobody speaks for more than 10 minutes about halakha. You only speak... I said, what do they speak about? Hashkafa. What is hashkafa? Do you know what that means? Literally? It's a general term for perspective, Jewish philosophy, but the idea of hashkafa is that there are no books of hashkafa. It's the kind of genre where, whatever the rabbi feels like, he speaks about. And I noticed that people compartmentalize themselves. Those who are legal rabbis only write books about Jewish law. They don't speak about anything else. They live in this box of Jewish law. Those who are Hasidic will never venture out of their box of Hasidut, not only out of the general story of Hasidut, but they won't even study other Hasiduts. It's their thing. And whereas I respect that security, I don't believe that on an intellectual level of progressing the Jewish world forward, if you live inside of your box, it's never going to take you anywhere.
It's suffocating.
It is suffocating. And if it's good for you, that's fine. But in general, what I find is that it's not good for your kids. Or it's not good for the people in your community. It could be that there's a rabbi that he really got turned on to Judaism in this approach. But now you're in a community and there are 200 people that come pray with you, and I can guarantee you that 200 people don't all fit in your box. So are you providing to them what they need? But then you have a different problem. The problem is once you step out of the box, come on. Once you step out of the box, you find yourself in a very lonely place. Because you realize that people don't appreciate people who step out of boxes. And they start to criticize you. Oh, you got to choose your way. You can't be this and this. Ever hear that before? Election time. You can't be a Republican and a Democrat. You just can't be. What if I am? What if I am a little bit of this and a little bit of that? Well, you have to choose your side, right?
I am who I am. That's what you hold on to.
But the world doesn't like you being who you are.
They do at the end of the road. Later on, once
you die and they put you on a tombstone.
No, because creativity. This is just my life's observation. Creativity comes from people who step out of the box, whether it be a writer, a producer, a movie director. I mean, whatever it might be, you name it, an artist. You step out of the box. And when the process of first stepping out of the box, the world is looking at you, the family structures, the social structures that don't fit you in. But once people see what you have created,
Marlene's not coming, so
everybody wants to be like you. Once they see what you've created.
It's true, though, to the world of art.
But it may not be true in the world of rabbi?
But that's the point. I think that's the point he's trying to make, that it's not working in the world of Jewish law and halakha and rabbis. People
of all denominations, by the way, even of the non-Orthodox denominations.
So you're a front runner. You're a front runner, which, as I've listened carefully to you in 3 years, is exactly what you've been. A front runner. No one else is speaking about the same things you're speaking about. Nobody else is speaking about taking all the different compartments and putting it together. What'd she say? Nobody what?
That's why.
San Diego, or maybe San Diego in environment.
See, that's why everybody loves me in town.
Maybe Marilyn knows something about this. Back in the 60s, there was that movement in psychology to be, come on, fully realized.
Yeah, actualization. Yeah. Maslow actualization.
And you're very young. You really are, in terms of realizing all that you're capable of being.
Thank you.
And I think all of these rabbis you're speaking about are really limited.
Well, I'm not. Sometimes I have people on this. I'm not speaking condescendingly about rabbis. There are people that older than me. They've done better work. But I will say that as I look forward and I see the people that are around the Jewish bubble, and I'm noticing, by the way, more and more that not just Jews are hovering around the Jewish bubble. There are many people that are looking for something, and it's not. The traditional Jewish model isn't going to it barely provides it to Jews. How's it going to provide it to non-Jews? But your mama, he knows. It's already 11 o'clock. She got out of school every time. 11 o'clock, he starts crying.
It's like an internal clock.
There you go.
Instead. Oh my God.
But, Paula, what was I saying before you use limitations? It's been a while since I got
Just
this.
stepping out of the box, even
right.
Elkanah has a box, it's comforting.
Stepping out of the box is lonely, because you find yourself in a place that you're doubting whether this path that you are seeming to trailblaze is actually a correct path. I mean, it's so much more comforting to be on someone else's path, to be following in someone else's footsteps. I read a quote once, and it said, you can either follow your dreams, or somebody else will pay you to follow theirs.
Right?
I heard, Rabbi Sachs said something really interesting, I think the week of Noah, or the one before, that Jews must be, there is no certainty. Let me see. The only certainty is that things and uncertain. Living with uncertainty. Being able to live with uncertainty. And it relates to what you're saying, when you're going off on your own in what you believe in, you're very vulnerable also. But, I wish I could remember the exact quote. It was,
It's okay. We got the idea.
the
And the idea.
is that there is no uncertainty.
Baruch Hashem.
Also,
So-
the deeper thinker you are, anyone is, the lonelier it is.
Right, but I'll tell you, it's a good kind of loneliness because, as I've seen it, is it actually works for more people than the other things. And I want to share with you, when I wrote my book, and I'm working now on the second book, and the book was called Yehi Shalom, Let There Be Peace. And even though it is an acronym of my name, Yehi Shalom, also, the idea was that this kind of study will bring peace to the world. And so someone did call me up. You always have to have that person. They called me up after I put out the book. Said, this book isn't bringing peace. This book is telling us everything that we didn't want to know about kosher. I said, oh, that's how it's going to bring peace. I said, what do you mean? And I didn't have this Rav Kook in hand when I answered him, but Rav Kook said it much better than I ever could, so I'd rather read it with you inside instead of me blabbering on. There's a teaching that our rabbis tell us, and you'll see it on this page. We end off every tefillah, every prayer, we end off with this saying. It's a teaching from the Talmud. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Elazar says in the name of Rabbi Chanina, Talmidei Chachamim, Torah scholars, Marbim Shalom Ba'olam, they increase peace in the world. There's an old Israeli joke that there's supposed to be a question mark over here. Torah scholars increase peace in the world? You ever seen rabbis fighting with each other? But Talmidei Chachamim, Torah scholars, increase peace in the world. Shneimar, like it says, V'chol banayich limudei Adonai, all of your children are learned of Hashem, or students of Hashem. V'rav shalom banayich. And how do you translate it into English? V'rav shalom banayich? And
So
many.
the peace should be with them or on them.
The multiple.
There's a great peace among your children, something to that effect. And then the Talmud does my favorite thing that the Talmud does. It says, wait, but this verse has nothing to do with what we just said. It doesn't have anything to do with Torah scholars. It says, Al tikra banaich. So hey, don't read the word banaich, your children. Ela bonaich. Rather, your builders. The builders, the Torah scholars, there's a lot of peace. They bring peace into the world. Now, this happens many times in the Talmud. Like you're going to see, it says also here, and Kol hashoneh halachot b'chol yom. Anybody who studies halakha, law, every day, muftach lo shehu ben ha'olam haba. Is promised that he will have a portion in the world to come. Shnei Amar, like it says, halichot olam lo. A verse that has nothing to do with what we just said. But it says, al tikri halichot, don't read the word halichot, ela halachot. Rather read the word halachot, not halichot. And then you just change the word of walking into the word of Jewish law, and then halachot olam lo. So and by the way, you read this sometimes and you say, seriously? Our rabbis, those who put down the greatest philosophers in time with their brilliance, can resort to wordplay. They're gonna, hey, don't read it like this, read it like that, and I'm supposed to believe them? It's almost a silly thing. And the truth is that if we don't ever delve into the depths of what our rabbis tell us, we're going to end up thinking that they're silly people. The Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. Have you ever heard of Ramchal?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking of starting a class. He has a work on Kabbalah called Derech Hashem, which explains the breakdown of the world. Who is Hashem? What is Hashem? What are angels? What are the beings? What are the heavens? Why do we exist? Why does Hashem exist? All kinds of things. I'm thinking of starting something. It's a very hard, deep class, but it's something that I think
Yeah,
I think
that would be really
that we can
Can it
tackle.
be for men and women?
Yes, it is for men and women. I'm going to have to figure out a time. I'm thinking we're going into the winter. There's a lot more learning that we can do, and it doesn't always have to be in a big group. There might be 2 or 3 people that are interested in a topic, and we'll find 45 minutes to make it work. So this Derech Hashem, I've been thinking more and more the world needs to learn. Thank you. Baruch Hashem. So Harav Luzzatto, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, he has a book called Ma'amarei Ha'ikarim, the Book of Fundamentals, things that Jews kind of forgot along the way. He says you have to know that when we say on Mount Sinai, we received an oral Torah and a written Torah, the written Torah being the Chumash or the Torah we have in the Ark, and an oral Torah. It's not just that there was an oral Torah that is a commentary on there was an entire separate Torah that was given to our rabbis, starting with Moshe Rabbeinu on Mount Sinai. And our rabbis taught this tradition down and down and down. And the rabbis of the Talmud always felt that there was this need to show that the two didn't contradict each other, that they were at least hints, at the very best, they were hints to each other inside of the text. And when they do something like this, where they don't read the word like this, rather read the word like that, they don't. This is not a proof. They're not trying to prove to you that that's why this idea is true. But rather, we have this idea that Torah scholars bring peace into the world. The Torah doesn't explicitly say it. Well, they had a way. If you read the verse like this, then you'll find an allusion to it in the text. You can possibly read it into the text. And they were just trying to fuse two worlds. And that's perhaps where this comes from. Fusing things is the way of our rabbis, not separating things. The Zohar calls this world an alma de shikra, a world of lies. And it calls the next world olam ha'emet, the world of truth. It also calls this world an alma dino, a world of peruda. What is peruda? Separation. Perud. Things are very separated here, very boxed away. This world is very into cutting things up, labeling them, putting them on the shelf. The bigger picture, the universality of the world, the interconnectedness between people and things and beings and objects and ideas is not something that this world appreciates so much.
Why do you think that is?
People need security and they want to define things.
And I
Are we
think-
talking about the world in general? Or
The world,
the Jewish
the world in
Human
general.
nature.
The world. Think about. I would just.
People need to group together.
Just the other night, my wife and I were watching a documentary about racism on college campuses. And some of the things that I've never thought about. There is what we call, it's blatant racism. I am from the KKK and I'm going to burn a cross in your lawn. That's racism. You know, we're just wondering in the eyes of a black student who's on a college campus where they're 1 out of 1,000 or 1 out of 500 or one, just what it feels like to be the different one in a country which we call this post-racial America, but it's not quite accurate. I don't believe that we're really in post-racial America. We're just in quiet racial America. You can't say certain things out loud, so we don't say them anymore. Does it happen? Sure, it happens. How many kids still can't date a black kid at school? Because what would their parents do if I get home? Or what about dating an Asian girl? Or so, and now I'm stepping outside of my Jewish box for a moment, just outside of the Jewish box. I'm just sharing an idea that this world is very much into separation. You know, we'll take care of ourselves and you'll take care of them. And our Jewish world is the same way. I believe that as we've developed as a Jewish world, we've also not developed as a universal world. Judaism was given not just to Jews. I don't know if you know that. On Mount Sinai, we were given a Torah, but our rabbis tell us that when the Torah was given, 70 sparks of the Torah went out to 70 different nations. And there's a bit of our Torah that is relevant to the whole world. And we have to...
Those nations today.
Everyone, all the nations of the world. Now, perhaps today you have more than 70 nations, but the number 70 in Judaism refers to the whole world. There is something that's relevant to the whole world that we're not doing. And it could be because, I'll tell you the truth, when we were in some ghetto somewhere and we were being killed just for stepping outside the walls, our first mission wasn't to, hey, you want to hear about the Torah? You want to hear what's in this for you? It just wasn't what we were doing. We weren't in that place. But today we're in that state of mind. I mentioned charity. I don't know if it was at this table. What? Rabbi Chaim, you want food? You have to be careful, okay?
He makes the cutest faces, I tell you.
Wow. He loves the fez. At home also, he walks around all day with his fez.
Oh, we should take pictures.
He's ready for Purim.
It's not Purim, this is my new
I know, but
Shabbat.
he's giving
Rabbi Chaim David Halevy was a brilliant thinker that was purposely erased from...
He's going shopping now.
was purposely erased from the books of Jewish history.
He just needs his shoes.
He's going to the shop.
Rabbi Chaim David Halevy was a Sephardic thinker, was a student of Rabbi Uziel, and was edited out in ways that you don't even know. His name is barely mentioned in places. They barely speak about him. Being the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv Yafo to being almost a nobody today. And he's had a revival in certain communities recently. But Rabbi Chaim David Halevy suggests that we have to stop looking at the world the way we always looked at the world. And he said that the Torah says that when you give charity, you have to give charity to Jews, and you give charity to non-Jews mipnei darchei shalom, because of the ways of peace. So they shouldn't say that, we only take care of ourselves. We should also give charity to other people so they won't hate us. Especially if it's in a situation where two people are collecting next to each other, there's a Jewish guy and a non-Jewish guy. It would look terrible if the Jewish guy only gave to Jewish people and didn't give to the non-Jewish person. Rabbi David Halevy says this is a model that worked for us in 2,000 years of exile. But today, we're no longer operating in exile mode. We're operating in ideal mode. He said, and we should be giving charity and helping out non-Jews because that's an ideal. Not because we're afraid that they're going to hate us or we're afraid that they're going to kill us. We should already be reaching this point of a universal thinking. And that was very brave of Rabbi David Halevy. And he's perhaps one of the only rabbis I've seen put that thought on paper, which is a very scary thing to me. But it's the truth. Back to Rav Kook. Rav Kook, remember, he's the counterpart of Rav Uziel. And I think this piece might come to do a tikkun. What is a tikkun?
Correction.
A correction. I think in the last time we focused on Rav Kook and Rav Uziel, we were very critical of Rav Kook. Rav Kook's lack of universality, Rav Kook's rigidness in areas of halakha and Kabbalah, and we made Rav Uziel stand out on this pedestal. And whereas that's true, that is true that Rav Uziel and Rav Kook's worldviews differed greatly, Rav Kook, I can only explain the way when you study his Torah. Imagine going through a desert for a whole week without water, and suddenly you come to this oasis and there's water. And it's not just water, but it's crystal clear, cool, fresh water. Imagine how you would feel. That's what my neshama feels like when I read things from Rav Kook. It's a different planet, it's a different universe. Let's read it together. On the bottom there's tiny little writing. This is a commentary of Rav Kook called Olat Raya. The offering of Raya. Raya is an acronym of Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak HaKohen. That was his name. Rav Kook says the following. Yesh to'im shechoshvim. There are those who are mistaken, and they think Shalom ha'olami, that the world peace lo yibaneh, will not be built ki im al yidei tzivyon echad b'daot u'tchunot. It will only be built, world peace will only be accomplished through getting the whole world to think and act the same way.
Oy vey.
Never.
What do you mean, oy vey?
Can you?
No.
I'm going to tell you the truth. It's so far in my life, especially in the Jewish community, every time I've brought up an issue about, hey, this is a big problem we have to fix in the Jewish world, I get attacked with letters, with emails, with phone calls that all say the same thing. How dare, in this time where it's so troubling for the Jewish people, you're compromising on Jewish unity, on achdus, on da-da-da-da, on ahavat Yisrael. How can you point out flaws, or how can you talk about separations at a time like this? I'll tell you the truth. And that it's actually at a time where we're on our tippy toes. It's a time of crisis where we're most willing to change. We're most willing to look out of ourselves. It's not working, or else we wouldn't be in this hot water situation. I recall one such post was last summer or 2 summers ago. There was a military operation in Israel. Last summer or 2 summers ago?
Gaza. Last summer.
In Gaza was last summer?
Yeah, with the tunnels and everything
Yes,
else.
okay.
The whole world hated Israel.
The whole world hated Israel.
Yeah.
They still do it.
Now, in the Jewish world, the support for our soldiers was overwhelming. From all denominations, I'd never seen such a thing. From the not Orthodox to the ultra-Orthodox, there were prayer rallies and say Tehillim for our soldiers and pray for the peace of Israel. And so I was speaking somewhere, and then I wrote an article about it. The article is where I got the most criticism. And I said, I'm sad. I'm happy at the fact that the whole Jewish world is rallying behind our soldiers. I said, but I remember the summer before this, where you had ultra-Orthodox boys in the streets saying they don't want to be drafted to the army, which I can respect. Even if I don't agree with, I can respect that stance, that they don't want to go to the army because they feel they're serving their country. But they were also belittling the soldiers. And they were saying, hey, we don't need soldiers. And then, we don't need an army. We're protecting the whole country with our Torah learning. And I said, maybe it's time for them now. Now they're holding a prayer rally. Why do soldiers have to die for us to now pray for them? Why can't it be that in every yeshiva they pray for the soldiers like they did in my yeshiva? In my yeshiva, every time we opened up the ark, we prayed for the soldiers. We were aware that we were not soldiers. We were not going to the army. But that we were partners in this cause. You could agree with it or not. and the letters that I got, and the mail that I got. How dare you separate us like this? And finally, we're all praying together. And well, look, it's already a year later, and we're back to the same place. Today in Israel, they're back to the sitting table and talking about how yeshiva boys won't serve. And it's not coming from a place of, we're partners in this together. We're going to do our part of studying Torah, and you're going to do your part of going to the front lines. But rather, it's not worth our time or our efforts to be soldiers, and you guys should die for us. So nothing changed. And that call wasn't heard. And this lie called, don't speak about our dirty laundry because it gets rid of our unity. It's a lie. It's a lie. It doesn't help. And Rav Kook is saying there are those who think that if we all think the same and talk the same and dream the same, everything is going to be okay. World peace will be accomplished. V'im ken, they say, if, and therefore, ksheroim talmidei chachamim, when they see Torah scholars, chokrim who are researching b'chokhmah v'dat Torah, with wisdom and knowledge of Torah, and because they're digging so deep into Jewish sources, mitrabim hatzdadim v'ashitot, suddenly you find yourself with numerous opinions that seem to contradict each other. Ever been to the Monday morning class? They have all kinds of opinions, all kinds of attitudes.
I think that's what's so confusing about the Torah, because there are all sorts of different opinions.
Great. Well, you're not the only one, by the way. You're not the only one.
Confusion is a dysfunctional state.
Oh, so Rav Kook is going to say what you just said. Chosvim, so these people, they think, shebazeh hem gormim lemachloket vehefach hashalom. So all these Torah scholars, they keep talking about conflicting opinions, and this one argues with that one, and some Jews do this, and some Jews do that. You know, when I became a rabbi, my big rule was, whenever I would teach Jewish law, I wouldn't do to me what was done. I wouldn't do to others what was done to me. What was done to me was I was taught Jewish law in the setting of, there's only one kind of way to do things. There's only one way to do things, and that's eating gefilte fish on Shabbat and dipping apple in honey on Rosh Hashanah. How many of you know that Sephardic Jews don't dip apples in honey on Rosh Hashanah?
I learned that when I came here for dinner.
And that we dip apples in sugar? You ever heard of such a thing? Because according to Kabbalah, honey is a bad thing. You're not supposed to eat on Rosh Hashanah. What do you mean, honey cake? What about, what's Rosh Hashanah without a honey cake? And I was just taught one style of Jewish law. And when I met Harav Peretz, who always taught us, listen, Sfaradim do this, Ashkenazim do that, the Yemenites do this, Hasidim do that. What happens if a couple comes to you and asks you a question and they're not observant? And they're not ready to do things the way Hasidic people do it? What can you tell them? There was a whole attitude of, so there are all kinds of Jews. There are even Jews that are not so observant of Jewish law, but you have to take them into consideration also when you rule on Jewish law. That whole picture, I decided I was going to teach. And one of the biggest criticisms that was aimed at me recently was that I focused too much on the Ashkenazi and Sephardic divide, because I'm always talking about Ashkenazim and Sephardim. It's true, I have an option. I'll tell you my other choice. My other choice is to only tell you what Sephardim do. I'll tell you the way I do things. I'll never tell you anything else. I won't tell you about Rav Kook, because he's from Belarus. I won't tell you about it. Never will you hear me quote the Lubavitcher Rebbe, because he's from Lubavitch. You'll never hear that. I could do such a thing too.
Who's giving the criticism?
Sensitive people.
Around here or in Israel?
Around here. In this,
Even the rabbis around
in the San Diego
They
community.
don't listen to the content. They just hear Sfaradim Ashkenazim and they think you're racist.
And they say, we don't talk about Sephardim and Ashkenazim. It's true.
This is the first time, by the way, that we get to hear all
Correct.
the options.
Absolutely.
And I tell you that Rav Kook is saying this better than I could have ever said it. These people believe that if you only teach one path, you'll bring to world peace. Because everybody will believe the same way. Uve'emet, eno ken. Says Rav Kook, truthfully, that's not true. Ki hashalom ha'amiti, the true peace, you can have people getting along with each other because they're all brainwashed to think the same way. But it's not peace, it's just being brainwashed to think the same way. This is the true peace. It's impossible that it will come to the world only through only through the value of increasing peace. And here's a play on words, which I'll explain. Only a value of increasing peace will bring out true peace. What does it mean, increasing peace? Remember it says, V'rav shalom banaich. Your children will be increased with peace, they'll have much peace. It says, Rav Kook, haribui shel hashalom the increase of peace, shitra'u kol hatzdadim v'chol hashitot. That you will be able to see all of the opinions and all of the different angles. And suddenly you'll realize that all the different opinions that exist, they all have a place that they belong. They all are focusing on the same thing from a different angle. Everything comes with its value, with its place, and with its ideas. When we say there are 70 ways to understand the Torah, and 70 is a number in Jewish law that means many ways to understand the Torah, I can go around my life saying like this. Sephardic Jews are like this, and the Yemenite Jews are like that, and the Ashkenazi Jews and the German Jews are like that, and the Hasidic Jews believe that. And what do they have in common? Nothing. Or I can tell you, hey, why don't you understand? They're all talking about the same thing. They're all attacking it from a different angle. And they tell a story. I probably heard this from me before, or from somebody else. That there was once 3 men that went into a dark room. And they were trying to help each other figure out what's in the middle of the room. There was something big in the middle of the room. So they all said, let's grab on, we'll feel it, and we'll explain to you what we're touching. There's no light, so we can't see. We'll feel and speak. We'll use our other senses. And so one grabbed on to something that was wobbly and it was floppy, and said, I'm holding on to a big record, but not like a big record. Okay. The other one says, I'm holding on to it's a big pipe. It's a pipe. And the other guy says, I'm holding on to a tree. It's a big, thick tree stump. And someone comes in and turns on the light. And there's a big elephant in the room. And one was holding on to the ears. And one was holding on to the trunk. And one was holding on to the legs. And they were all describing what they were seeing, where they were at that time that they wrote it or they said it. But once the light comes on, you'll realize we're all talking about the same thing. Just I was talking about the legs, you were talking about the trunk, and he was talking about the ears. When I look at the different Jewish opinions, I don't say, hey, look, they're all fighting with each other, they're all contradicting each other. Rather, if I lived in that place at that time with this philosophy and those influences, I would say that also. And when I bring them to the table, I can paint not a one-dimensional picture, but a two-dimensional picture, I guess would be the word, but a three-dimensional picture. I can now see the different angles where they come from. And that will bring true peace, because you've got rid of the arguments, and you've now created, if you get rid of the arguments, you created peace. Very good. But not peace by elimination, peace by inclusion. To understand what Rav Kook is going to say next, you have to know that Rav Kook is a Kabbalist in his bones. He doesn't have another way to look at the world. Rav Kook, many saw him as a nationalist. He was a diehard fan of Israel, the land of Israel, the whole land of Israel. They also saw Rav Kook as a poet. He wrote many songs, and they saw him as a chief rabbi. But what many people didn't quite understand was Rav Kook was motivated by one thing and one thing only. And that was his absolute devotion to the Kabbalah of the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria. He was a brilliant, I don't know if the word is an explainer. He could take Rav Yitzchak Luria's Torah, which is very hard to read, and put it into a piece that makes sense to us living today. He was a masterful, not watering down, but bringing down a very complicated ideas to very simple language. So this entire piece, if you were familiar with the Kabbalistic origins of it, sure. Yeah.
And that's why it's difficult.
Many reasons why they didn't like him. But the main problem that a Kabbalist has is that he ends up seeing the world in a way that is very different than other people and very easy to misunderstand. And when Rav Kook saw and this is part of this, the Kabbalists see separation in the world as a terrible thing. It's also the reason why Kabbalists are so strict when it comes to matters of halakha. Kabbalists make terrible halachic decisors. And all of the poskim that we have had that are Kabbalists have been super rigid and super strict. The reason being, when they see two opinions on halakha, one says you're allowed to do this on Shabbat, and one says you're not allowed to do this on Shabbat,
We're not allowed.
they're going to choose not allowed. Why? Why? Because for them, I want to unite all the opinions. The one who says it's allowed, it doesn't think you have to do it. He just says that it's allowed. But the one who says it's not allowed, what does he feel? You're putting on a good show. What does he feel? The one who says it's not allowed, that you really can't do it. So a Kabbalist, when faced with two opinions, will choose, let's incorporate all of the opinions, which ends up making for a very rigid kind of Judaism. Which is why in general we say, hey Kabbalists, we're going to study halakha now, you stay at the door. We do that very often. But this philosophy is a very inclusive philosophy, and he's going to continue. ואדרבה, גם העניינים הנראים כמיותרים או כסותרים, even the things that seem superfluous, extra, or even those things that are contradictory. you'll see, כשמתגלה אמיתת החוכמה לכל צדדיה, once you uncover all the different angles of the wisdom, שרק על ידי קיבוץ כל החלקים וכל הפרטים וכל הדעות הנראות שונות וכל המקצועות החלוקים, דווקא על ידם יראה אור האמת והצדק ודעת השם יראתו ואהבתו ואור תורת אמת. Once you reveal and you uncover all the angles to one idea, you'll realize that nothing contradicts with each other. They're just approaching the same thing from a different angle. What fascinates me is after 2,000 years of exile. What is exile? What does it mean? What was it like for Jews in exile?
Separation.
Separation from what?
Each other.
From each other, from Hashem, from the land of Israel, from the language that we speak. Very difficult life. People trying to kill us, people chasing us from one country to the next, people persecuting us. We didn't have freedom of speech, not freedom of expression, not freedom to print books the way we would like, not freedom to sing. We didn't have freedom of anything.
Earn a living.
Right? Earn a living, and so many professions were limited to us. After 2,000 years, we came back to certain places, America, Israel, wherever Jews met after these years. And we have the same exact Torah sitting in the Ark. The same words, the same letters are in the Torah. So some of us had Torahs in a big shiny silver case. And some of us had Torahs with a nice velvet cover to it. Some of us read the Torah standing up on a table. Some of us lay it down on a table. Can you imagine that after 2,000 years, we're still believing in the same thing? So we have a little different flavor. When we read the Torah, we sing it a little bit differently than when you read the Torah, you sing it a little differently. That's the only thing that separates us after 2,000 years. And it's incredible. It's an incredible thing. It's an incredible thing that we are so close after so many years apart. Think about friends that you have from high school. You haven't seen each other in probably most of you 10 years, because that's the last time you were in high school. And just in 10 years, you'll see.
Thank you for the compliment.
You're welcome. In 10 years,
We have our 50-year reunion next year.
I don't even remember where I went to high school.
look. Let me put.
Hi. Now he's happy.
Remember anymore.
Let's pass him over. We pass him down this way, please. Sorry.
Pass him down.
Can I pass the bottle down, please?
That's the baby. Try
Doris.
keeping him occupied, but...
Thank you.
Mama, look at you.
Now he's happy.
Look in 10 years how people are different than the way you last saw them. Their life is different. They're married to different people. They're doing different careers that you thought they would be involved in. 2,000 years is a long time. And that means we're holding on to a truth that after 2,000 years we're back together and we're pretty much on the same page. A little different food. It would be different if some people next door neighbors who eat camel meat, and where some people came from, their next door neighbors ate pig meat, and we still kept kosher. So we picked up on the spices a little bit differently, and on the amount of cholesterol and fat a little differently. Okay, fine. But when I look at the Jewish world, I don't see the separations that everyone else is focused on. I look and say, this is incredible. How much we have in common. How many different flavors we've been able to bring to the same table. It must have been very boring once upon a time when everyone did the same thing. It must have been very boring. And I look at this and I say, wow, this is incredible. This is a very beautiful thing. The problem is that everyone else looks at it as a problem. Oh, you know how many people have told me, I can't, I would love to be here on Shabbat, but I can't pray here because I'm not Sephardic. Do you know the amount of Sephardic people in my synagogue is nullified in 60 to the amount of Ashkenazi people in my synagogue? But you wouldn't know that. Maybe you would. But this is not a racial synagogue. So we chose to pray in a certain style with certain tunes. It's what we're used to. It's what we like. It's what makes sense to us. So what? But even if it was Sephardic and everyone here was Sephardic and we were all cavemen who beat our chests. Okay, so what would happen? So you still couldn't pray here? That would be such a silly thing to say. And if some of you are even embarrassed that someone said such a thing. It's just a silly thing to say. But there are people who are focused on the Alma de Peruda, on the world of separation. And Rav Kook is saying that's not going to bring peace. Who will bring peace? those who are willing to step up their game and say, I want to discover every angle of every issue that ever existed.
Out of the box.
Out of the box.
Lonely.
And it's time for that in the 21st century.
It is time for that. Someone just asked me now how we prayed in Jerusalem. What style did we pray? So I told him I'm not going to answer his question. I'm going to tell him about there's a yeshiva in the so-called Muslim quarter in Jerusalem. And it's a yeshiva led by Rabbi Shlomo Avinu. I'm a big fan, though not a student, and I don't always agree. But I'm a big fan. Rabbi Shlomo Avinu, you know the bookcases in my house? I have an entire bookcase, not a shelf, a case written by him, and I don't own all of his books. He's a brilliant author, a teacher, a writer. He's a student of Rav Kook's son. And he's been put under the gun many times, under fire for all kinds of accusations and things that people don't like him. He's too good at what he does, and people try in every way they can to shut him down. Rav Aviner is on the forefront of Jewish education in my eyes. He talks about every subject in every way, every possible. He writes books from things like Jewish law to Jewish philosophy. He has books on Kabbalah as well as books on history. He writes books for children because he feels that even children need Jewish books written by rabbis. He writes novels because you also need novels that are written by rabbis. He writes songs and poetry, and he gives classes on the internet and the radio and wherever he can give classes. Rav Aviner started what?
Renaissance man.
Very, very much so. Rav Aviner was actually a former Mossad agent, and his 60th birthday, so his files were declassified, and he was able to tell his students what he did in the Mossad. But he was an agent he's from France, so he was able to do things for Israel in the French intelligence area. A very well-rounded personality. Rav Aviner actually started a project about 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, I don't know exactly how many years ago, called Shelot V'Tshuvot, Questions and Answers. They have whole volumes in my library of questions and answers, long letters and halachic responsa. It's called Shelot V'Tshuvot SMS, text message responsa, which is, he figured most people don't have rabbis that they feel comfortable calling. Now you might understand in America, you probably have a local rabbi you're close with, at least on a certain level. Not all Jews around the world have that, and especially not in Israel. Israel has perhaps the most rabbis per person in the whole world, but there's no such thing as a community rabbi in Israel. You can pray your whole life in a synagogue that doesn't have a rabbi. It's the way the country operates. It's a strange way to operate, but it's the way it operates. The chief rabbi of your town, probably you have to go through so much red tape to talk to him that it's not worth even bothering to reach out. It's like reaching the mayor of the town. It's the same idea. So Rabbi Nair said, I'm going to take text message questions. Anybody who wants to text me at any hour of the day or night, I'll respond within a certain amount of time. People write him questions like, Rabbi, I just put my meat pot in my dairy sink, and is it kosher? I'll write yes and give you a source for it, where you go look it up. Or you'll ask him, Rabbi, just this week, can you kill a terrorist that's already been neutralized, they have him pinned down, but should we let him be arrested and then freed in a prisoner release? And Rabbi Viner will write his answer. Some things he'll tell you, someone asks him, Rabbi, why did the Holocaust happen? And so he writes back, it's a disgraceful thing to those who died in the Holocaust to ask such a question by text message. He says, because 160 characters are not enough to answer this question. And such, he has some answers. For example...
He's twittering?
Yeah, on his phone. Texting. Not twittering, but texting. Rav Aviner was asked, I once saw, Rabbi, if I'm in the middle of learning and my father asks me something, is it better to help my father or to continue learning Torah? So he says, it's better for you to get off the phone and texting me and go help your dad. That was when he has a certain witty sense of humor. And he was under attack very harshly by people who didn't appreciate that Jewish philosophy and law were being limited to text. Who asked such a question by text message? What kind of self-respecting rabbi answers halachic questions by text message? And so someone asked Rav Aviner, why do you answer questions by text message? People make so much fun of you. It makes us look so silly. So Rav Aviner said, well, stupid people will always find something to mock. He said, you needed to ask someone a question by text message. That's why you texted me. So that's why I'm here answering. And you'll see him walking the Jewish quarter by texting people and all kinds of things. Why am I telling you about Rav Aviner?
How do you spell it? I'd love to.
Aviner. He has a student, Rabbi Mordechai Tzion, who translates almost all of his things for free into English online. There's a blog, a beautiful thing. I told you, I don't agree with everything Rabbi Viner says, but he's an incredible teacher of
Send
Torah.
us the link.
I'm happy to do so. Why am I mentioning Rabbi Viner? What were we talking about?
Out of the box.
Oh, his yeshiva in the Muslim quarter. He has a yeshiva in the Muslim quarter, which I used to pray at sometimes. And the rule there is, it's not an Ashkenazi yeshiva, it's not a Sephardic yeshiva, it's not a Hasidic yeshiva. And the rule is, whoever goes up to be the Chazan, he brings his Siddur with him. So he prays the Nusach that is in his book. If he's Yemenite, he'll bring a Yemenite book. If he's Ashkenazi, he'll bring an Ashkenazi book. If he's Hasidic, he'll bring a Hasidic book, so on and so forth. What about the tunes? So what tunes do you pray with? They take a vote in the room. Either by the majority of people that want to pray in a certain tune, or they'll say how many of us are Sephardic, or how many of us are Ashkenazi, how many of us are Karlbach, or how many, and so on and so forth. And they'll choose a tune. So it's very often that you go to Rav Yiner's yeshiva, and they'll use a Yemenite siddur and pray a Karlbach Kabbalat Shabbat. Or they'll use an Ashkenazi siddur and a Yemenite tune. It's the kind of thing they do there. And people are very like, what do you mean? You have to have one style, one way. It's crazy to have a yeshiva that is so in the clouds. And the truth is that after you graduate such a yeshiva, you now know how to pray with every prayer book and every tune that the Jewish community has, and you are comfortable with every denomination of Judaism that was at your school. You know what an incredible thing that is? But that's thinking, like, it's not like 21st century thinking. It's like 100 years from now. Someone's going to, hey, I think that we should do this. And then, oh, such an original thinker, and they're going to praise him. And they already did it 20 years ago by Rabbi Yiner's yeshiva. We have to start thinking like that a little bit more. Stop putting ourselves in boxes. I want to read just a little bit more with you. Al-Ken, he says, therefore, Talmidei Chachamim, Torah scholars, marbim shalom, they increase peace. Notice it doesn't say that they bring peace. It doesn't say that they create peace. The word he uses is marbim peace, increase peace. What does the word increase mean?
It makes it bigger.
Makes it bigger.
Assuming that there already was peace.
Further it along.
Okay, that's a very nice thought. There already was peace, and you're bringing out more. But normally, when you increase something, multiplying, more is more better. Are more opinions better?
Maybe
Are
not.
more groups better?
No.
He says yes. By finding out more, by adding more angles, by finding more understandings, you are increasing peace. You're not making peace greater or bigger, you're increasing it. And you're showing that the more opinions we have doesn't take away from our unity. It just adds variety. Then it adds comparing and contrasting is a little bit easier. What they increase and what they explain, and also the original thoughts that they bring to the table. I was just telling my wife the other night, I was looking through my library, and I was pointing to certain, I'm not going to mention in public, denominations, not ethnic, philosophical denominations, which they stopped their original thinking about 80 years ago. And since then they've been printing books and printing books and printing books, but have not brought out any more new ideas than existed 80 years ago. Whereas there are other spiritual paths and philosophies that, in the Jewish world, that every week there's a new idea, a new concept, a new month, there's a new road they're willing to blaze through. That's a very impressive thing. But not everyone can say that for themselves. I'm going to turn off the recording for a minute because I want to say something that's relevant. What Paulin is bringing up is an interesting point. Is these people were almost larger than life personalities. They were connected to something that was much greater than just a person in their place and time. And Rav Shlomo Carlebach explains that reality was, for some of us, the distance between us and the person sitting next to us is so huge that we can't even fathom, like, oh, he went to another world and he met dead people and he came back. That's a crazy thing. Yeah. But for some people, their soul is so connected with every person that the distance between this world and another world and a person who lived and a person who died, it's almost non-existent because they already live on a plane of greatness, of immense magnitude. In the Hasidic world, there was a revolution. The revolution started with the Baal Shem Tov. But there was a second revolution that nobody likes to talk about. And that was the revolution of the students of the Chozeh of Lublin. and I didn't think I would end up here today, but it's a great place to end the class. It's a nice idea. The Choseh of Lublin was called the Seer. Seer, you know what a Seer?
Seer of Lublin.
The Seer of Lublin. Why is a Seer called a Seer?
Because he sees things.
Because he sees things. The Seer of Lublin was a student of Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk. He was a student of Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk. Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk, you've probably heard many stories about Rabbi Zusha of Anapoli.
Yes.
It's the brother of Rabbi Zusha of Anapoli. These are original Hasidic rabbis, like before there were denominations. The Choseh of Lublin moved to Lublin.
Well, it's a very direct link. You have the Baal Shem Tov, and then you have the Maggid of Mezrich, and then right underneath you have Rabbi Elimelech, who was a student.
Okay.
And then
The Maggid of Mizrich had many students. For example, the first stolen Rebbe, Rabbi Aaron of Karlin, was a student of the Maggid of Mizrich, who was a student of the Baal Shem Tov. The first Lubavitch Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the author of the Tanya, was a student of the Maggid of Mezrich. Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk, Rabbi Zusha of Anapoli were students. So the next generation, it's already Baal Shem Tov, generation 1. Maggid of Mezrich, generation 2. These students of the Maggid, called the Chevra Kadisha, they were called, the holy group, not the Chevra Kadisha like who bury people. And they were the holy group of friends. They were in this bond of brotherhood. That was generation number 3. Now you have generation number 4, and here's where a revolution happens. The Choseh of Lublin moves to Poland, to Lublin. That was the way the Maggid worked, is he sent his students to wherever he felt they would be the most influential. And that's how some rabbis ended up in Stolin, and some rabbis ended up in Lubavitch, which was a town, and some ended up in Lublin. These are not special words, they're just towns that are, it's like San Diego, it's a place. The Choseh was a seer. They would say that on Friday afternoon he would stand at his window and listen to his rabbi teaching Torah in Lezhensk, which is in a different part of Poland. Okay, listen, I'm not a Chassid, so I hear the story, you believe the story, could be not. This is what they say about the Choseh of Lublin. The Choseh of Lublin was an extremely holy person. Stories about him are his Chassidim were already on a whole different level. Shlomo Carlebach used to say that he had 5,000 students that had Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration, and just the rest of them didn't have divine inspiration. I don't know if there was any Rebbe who had 5,000 students at that time, but Rav Shlomo he wasn't lying to you, he was just telling you, you should understand that even the students of the Choseh of Lublin were holy people. The Choseh of Lublin, when he passed, the dynasty went to his son. And that was a terrible misdeed in the world of Chassidim. Because until then, Chasidism didn't really go, as a rule, from father to son. It went from Rebbe to the most fitting person to take over the leadership. On a spiritual level, on a learning level, obviously, on the capacity of being a leader. You could be a great learner. For example, the Baal Shem Tov had a son who was supposed to take over the Hasidic movement, who turned out to not be fit as a leader, not as a person, as a holy man he was, but as a leader he wasn't, which is why he was very quickly replaced with the Maggid of Mezrich. The Maggid of Mezrich said, listen, we need a leader and he was replaced. And you found already that it's not always a father and son relationship. My wife's going to be proud of this. But there were even some Chassidiyot who went father to daughter. This happened a few times in the Chassidic world. Chassidim will never tell you about this. But there was not once or twice a Chassidic Rebbe who was a lady. This happened. This was something that must have been Chassidut, you have to know. As it expanded, it didn't grow this way. It went this way. And so on the fringes, you had groups that were, the people in the middle wouldn't take responsibility for the people on the sides. It's the truth.
That's what we have today.
Absolutely. Lubavitch, for example, had 7 to 10 breakaways that were part of Chabad. There were not just 7 Rebbes, there were perhaps 20 Rebbes of Chabad that you don't know about, because mainstream Chabad edited them out of the history because they broke away and then died in the Holocaust. And so they'd rather just not let you know about the other breakaways of Chabad. But they were part of the Chabad movement, it just separated. In Lezhensk, in Lublin, when the son took over, there was another Rebbe already there. He was a student of the Choseh, and his name was the Yid HaKadosh, the holy Yid, the holy Jew. He was the Rebbe of Beshischa. And he was really, perhaps on a spiritual level, the one who was fitting to take over for his rabbi. And when the Hasidim saw that it went father to son, some Hasidim went after the son, and some said, this is crazy. This Rebbe is much more fitting, and they went after the Yid HaKadosh. The Yid HaKadosh, those of you who know, Hasidim pray Shacharit at what time of day? I was once in a Hasidic synagogue. They prayed morning services at 3:30 in the afternoon. They don't pray on time, Hasidim, but it's not true. Because in Stolen, they pray at 6:30 in the morning. In Breslov, they try to pray with sunrise. The Yehudi Kadosh was a radical Rebbe, and his whole thing was time is irrelevant. I'm going to pray morning prayers at 3:30 because I was up from sunrise studying Kabbalah, or something to that effect, and he started this whole new Chassidut. He had a student, who was the Yid Kadosh student, Dvar Liba?
What?
The Yid's student was a man named the Kutzker Rebbe. Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kutsk. You've heard about the Kutzker Rebbe?
Yes. Yeah.
I married my wife because of the Kutzker Rebbe. We bonded on our first date over Kutzker Rebbe stories. The Kutzker Rebbe was a fanatic Rebbe that I'm in love with. He was a harsh. I don't think he would even look at me. The Kutzker Rebbe, they say about him that when Mashiach comes, that all the Jews in the world are going to go shake his hand, and the Kutzker Rebbe isn't going to go. And at the end, when the Mashiach is done shaking all the Jews' hands, the Kutzker Rebbe said, Mashiach is going to come and say, "Who are you?" He says, "I am Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kutsk, the Kutzker Rebbe." He says, "Well, why didn't you come to shake my hand?" And the Kutzker Rebbe said, "I'm going to tell Mashiach, yeah? Why didn't you come to take the Jews out of exile?" That was the kind of Rebbe that he was. He was on fire. He was a sharp man. The Kutzker Rebbe used to tell his Hasidim, "I don't want you to be Hasidic." He said, "I don't care if you're evil people, but at least be honest about the fact that you're an evil person. He said, I hate liars. Don't be evil and pretend to me that you're a righteous person. I don't need evil people who pretend to be righteous. Hashem loves evil people who say that they're evil people because they're genuine. And He likes righteous people who say that I make mistakes because that makes them genuine. Hashem doesn't want you righteous, He wants you real." That was the Kutzker Rebbe, was on fire. He had a student who was the Chidushei Harim, the first Gerer Rebbe. You ever heard of the Gerer Chassidim?
Yes.
They broke away from, they were the next dynasty of the Kutzker Rebbe. The last 19 years of the Kutzker Rebbe's life, he was in such a place of intensity that he didn't lead his Chassidim anymore. He handed over the baton to the Gerer Rebbe. And then the Gerer Rebbe handed it on to the last Rebbe in his dynasty, truthfully. There was a Rebbe in between. His name was the Kutzker Rebbe is Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kutsk. He had a son named Rav, I think his name was also Mendel, but I can't be. He was the silent Rebbe. He didn't speak. He never spoke. He was just quiet. And his Chassidim followed him in silence. Silent Chassidim. The stoners were the screaming Chassidim, the silent Chassidim. My friends, if you wonder why the Lithuanian world thought the Chassidim were crazy, some of the looks on your face, at face value, if you don't understand who these people are and the messages they were bringing, you would also think they were crazy. But it was a lack of taking the time to understand who these people were. You had then the last Rebbe, Rabbi Simcha Bunim of Pishischa. Rav Simcha Bunim was perhaps my favorite Rebbe in personality. Simcha Bunim, forgive me Chassidim for hearing this, he didn't wear a long coat, he wore a short suit, which in Hasidic circles, you might as well take off your kippah.
See, I don't know.
You don't get it, right? It doesn't make sense, right? He was a pharmacist, not a Rebbe. He worked in a pharmacy. He loved to play chess with people. He trimmed his beard. And when they would say, like, you're not a Rebbe, you don't act like a Rebbe, you don't talk like a Rebbe. See, that's the whole point. If you're able to realize that a Rebbe doesn't always look the way you want a Rebbe to look, and doesn't always walk the way you want a Rebbe to walk, a Rebbe is an original thinker. And that's who he was. And that dynasty of Hasidim didn't die out in the Holocaust, aside from the Gerer Hasidim.
And what was the name of that group?
It was this bunch, the breakaway of Lublin. But their whole revolution was, you cannot pass on a baton from father to son. Not every son is worthy to take over for his father. Just because you're born into a family doesn't make you the proper person to take over. In Israel, you had this problem a number of years ago. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef was the one who eliminated this problem. When Rabbi Ovadia Yosef joined the ranks of rabbinic leadership, he didn't have a father who was a rabbi. He didn't even have a grandfather who was a rabbi. And he had a hard time getting a job as a judge at a rabbinic court. And he found himself serving alongside rabbinic judges who didn't know right and left the laws of judging. They just were in the job because their parents arranged for them a job. There's a rabbi in the Talmud, and with this I'm going to end today. A Rabbi Yosef fought a war, and he made it into the rule that a father and a son can't take over for each other, which is funny because his son ended up becoming the chief rabbi, but not because it was appointed. It was an election that he won the elections. Yeah, this is a different. Both chief rabbis, and it wasn't a direct. Right? There were rabbis in between, but there was a rabbi in the Talmud when he passed away, on his deathbed, his son came to him and said, "Father, before you pass away, please put in a good word for me with your colleagues. Help me. You're passing away. You're the leader of the generation. Put in a good word. Say, my son is a good guy. My son is a good rabbi, and maybe he'll help me out." And this, I don't remember if it was Rav Chisda, Rav Chanina, or Rabbi Chanina.
Yes. You just sent it to me?
Could be.
Yeah, Rabbi Chanina.
Rabbi Chanina, he told him, "No, I won't put in a good word for you." He said, "Ma'asecha yikarvucha," your actions will bring you close. "U'ma'asecha yirachakucha," and your actions will bring you far away. You will not get a good word from me. If you are of stellar integrity, if you are a person of proper character, they will choose you anyway. And if you're not, then it's not proper for me to put in a good word for you. Rather, focus on your actions, and that will be your future. When it comes here to the Choseh of Lublin, to this revolution, there was truth. There is a truth, by the way, of I was raised in a Hasidic Rebbe's home. I know how to think like a Rebbe. I know how to dress like a Rebbe. I know how to talk like a Rebbe. There is truth to that. But there's much more truth. There's much more truth to I am a Rebbe. My whole being is a Rebbe. And not just the Rebbes, but in your life. Who are you? You're not just who you are because your parents made you that way. You're not just Jewish. You're not just Jewish because you were born Jewish. Stop being born Jewish. Be a Jew by choice. Not a Jew by birth. Make yourself into a Jew. Turn yourself into a person who thinks like this. Turn yourself into a person who walks like this. Not because, I do it because the pan wasn't big enough for the brisket and that's why they cut off the corners. Remember that story?
Yes.
Rather become a person who you are. You need to be who you are. The most genuine person that you can be. And Rav Kook is saying, there is not one right way to do that. Your job is to bring all the different opinions to the table, all the different angles to the table, as unpopular as they are, but create that three-dimensional picture. Because that three-dimensional picture will be what will bring the peace. And the ultimate peace is the redemption of the world. Not even a man riding on a donkey, but the redemption of the world. The whole world will realize that Hashem is one with all these different flavors and all these different varieties and all these different interpretations and understandings. They all go to one place and they're all coming from one place. And that is Hashem. And which have a beautiful day. Beloved.